We begin this morning with the ongoing violence in Sudan, which is in the midst of a bitter power struggle between rival generals. Several countries are now evacuating their citizens from the capital, Khartoum, as fighting between the army and a paramilitary group shows no signs of slowing down. On Saturday, the U.S. pulled out its embassy staff and diplomatic personnel in an incident-free extraction that involved 3 transport helicopters taking off from the U.S. base in Djibouti. Secretary of State Antony Blinken supervised the operation, which resulted in fewer than 100 people being evacuated. But U.S. officials say there are currently no plans to get out other Americans still in Sudan. NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kuby has the latest.
After days of planning, several nations have begun evacuating their diplomatic staff out of Sudan. But as the violence continues in the capital city, Khartoum, these rescue missions become even more dangerous.
The urgent race to evacuate citizens from the growing violence in Sudan's capital city, Khartoum. The French carrying out several evacuation flights successfully, the Italians flying its citizens and those of other European nations to safety. The U.S. carried out their daring rescue operation under cover of darkness. Elite U.S. Special Operations flew multiple helicopters 800 miles from Djibouti to Sudan, landing on the embassy grounds where they loaded 80 government personnel and their families onto 3 Chinook helicopters in about an hour. Remarkably, U.S. officials said there were no injuries or complications.
These are missions that are inherently risky. Kudos to the Department of Defense for pulling this off so smoothly.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken also announced the closing of the U.S. embassy, saying it was temporary and necessary due to the unacceptable risk to embassy personnel. More than 16,000 Americans are still in Sudan, many of them dual nationals. But with supplies running low, hundreds are hoping to escape, their family members outraged.
Really, I'm disappointed. I'm afraid to losing them in the next hours. I don't know what will happen in Sudan next few hours.
Biden administration officials say they do not expect a larger evacuation of Americans now or even in the coming days. Sunday was the 3rd and final day of a ceasefire meant to celebrate the Muslim holiday Eid al-Fitr. But the truce did not stop the bloodshed. So far, more than 400 have died, 3,000 more injured, according to the World Health Organization. Civilians caught between warring generals, even as neither side shows any signs of backing down.
The U.S. military's planning for Sudan continues. Multiple other nations have reached out to the U.S. asking for help in getting their diplomatic personnel out of Sudan. And now U.S. officials say the administration is considering it. Back to you.
All right, Courtney, thank you so much. Let's bring in NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs for more on the story. Jack, really nice to see you. Let me start with this. How surprised are you that this U.S. evacuation unfolded without any complications or incidents? This was not a simple operation, was it?
No, very complicated, actually. What made it a bit easier is that all the evacuees could be brought to one spot, and so the evacuation itself, once the helicopters were on the ground, didn't take all that long. It was less than an hour. What made it difficult, however, was the distance between the staging area in Djibouti and Khartoum, which was at the almost extreme limit of the range of the helicopters. That means that these MH-47s and a few MH-60s could get from Djibouti to Khartoum, but couldn't get back without refueling. So undoubtedly they were refueled by C-130 refueling aircraft on the way back. It was a complicated operation in a difficult area, pulled out flawlessly.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. You know, we know other countries are also evacuating their private citizens, but the U.S. says it has no plans to do that for U.S. citizens. Do you think that's a mistake? What kind of risks would people who are there be exposed to?
Well, it's extremely risky, obviously, for those who remain behind in Sudan. But to conduct some kind of evacuation for the remaining Americans and dual nationality people, and we're talking between 10 and 15,000 or maybe even more people, would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, and put everybody at risk. I'm not surprised, nobody is surprised, that the administration has no plans on executing any kind of rescue operation for the remainder, Stephanie.
Is there anything that can be done to support the people who do try to get out?
Well, in the past, in situations that are similar to this, when people were in one location or several locations that could be identified, airdrops of supplies have been affected. People who were close to borders or who were close to the sea could be evacuated too. But we're talking about a relatively small number who could be assisted in the coming days when the battle is going to get tougher and tougher. Stephanie.
Yeah, it's just such a big country and such a difficult situation. Colonel Jacobs, thank you so much for your time this morning.
You're welcome.
The 2024 presidential race could begin in earnest this week, with President Biden expected to launch his campaign for re-election as soon as tomorrow. For more, we're joined by NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memley. Mike, nice to see you. What do we know about the president's re-election campaign, and where is he looking to focus his energy?
Well, good morning, Stephanie. With this president, I've covered him a long time over multiple campaigns. There's always a little bit of suspense until the words come out of his mouth. But we are expecting to hear the president make his candidacy for re-election official, likely in the form of a campaign video that we expect to go up tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is the 4-year anniversary of when the president launched his successful 2020 campaign. We then expect to see the president addressing a union group here in Washington. Union voters are really the backbone of the president's political support, and he wants to shore them up in a hurry. And then we expect to really hear the president's pitch, focused a lot of what we've been hearing from the president since the State of the Union address, which is about the need to finish the job, to talk about the accomplishments he believes he's been successful at reviving American manufacturing, shoring up the economy, and that he needs 4 more years to do that. Now, just because he announces his candidacy does not necessarily mean we're going to see him travel the country on a campaign barnstorming tour. You're going to see this president do what presidents typically do when they seek re-election, have that rose garden strategy, rely on all the trappings of the office for most of this year, and then wait until his Republican opponent is clear. Obviously, we expect that might be former President Donald Trump in a rematch, but that's when the campaigning will really gear up next year.
Yeah, you know, not everyone's looking forward to this announcement from President Biden. He's facing stiff headwinds. A new NBC News poll says 70% of all Americans, including 51% of Democrats, believe he should not run for a second term. Obviously not the numbers any president wants to see the week of a planned re-election bid announcement. How is the White House responding to that skepticism?
Yeah, there are so many numbers to look at in this new poll, but really the magic number in this campaign is 80. That's the president's age. He'll be 82 if he is reelected and sworn in for a second term. Obviously, the oldest president in American history. This obviously comes up a lot in my conversations with Biden advisors, and they don't deny that age is going to be an issue. But here's how they respond to it. They talk about 2 things. One is that he brings experience and wisdom to the office. They argue that no other president without his experience would have been able to do the things he's been able to do legislatively with all his accomplishments, but also leading the world in a coalition against Vladimir Putin in support of Ukraine. They also make this point, which is that the president is known as being optimistic. He's always got a positive, forward-looking vision, and that's going to be a very real contrast to what we've seen from Republicans, a very dark, pessimistic view of the country. That ultimately voters will reward the president's vision.
All right, well, we're also learning more about the team that will be supporting the president in his re-election bid, including his 2024 campaign manager. According to 2 sources familiar with the decision, the president is expected to tap Julie Chavez Rodriguez for the job. What can you tell us about her?
Yeah, she's a veteran of the Biden team for the last 4 years. She served as deputy campaign manager in his 2020 campaign. She's been a senior advisor in the White House as the head of government affairs within the administration. She also served on Kamala Harris's ill-fated 2020 campaign, so she brings experience in both camps. Notably, she's also the granddaughter of the labor leader Cesar Chavez. Now, it's important to note that even as she will have the title of campaign manager, a lot of the key decisions about Biden's reelection campaign are going to continue to come from inside the West Wing. Jen O'Malley Dillon, who was Biden's 2020 campaign manager, continuing to call a lot of the shots inside the building, along with Anita Dunn, a senior advisor. And so we're going to continue to see new names pop up as the campaign takes shape, but this will be a dual effort both inside and outside the West.
It's going to be interesting, Mike. Mike Memley, thank you so much. And as President Biden prepares to announce his run for re-election, it looks like Americans aren't happy with the idea of what may be inevitable, a 2024 rematch with former President Donald Trump. According to a new NBC News poll, just 26% of Americans believe he should run in 2024, while 70% say he should not. And Trump isn't faring much better. Only 35% say he should run, while 60% say no. NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray joins us now to break all of this down. Mark, according to this latest poll, Biden's job approval rating is also down. What are the reasons behind Democratic primary voters not wanting Biden to run in 2024?
Yeah, Stephanie, our pollsters actually asked Democratic respondents who said that they don't want President Biden to run for re-election and asked them to answer that in a one word or a short phrase. And one word really stands out, Stephanie, and that is Biden being too old. And in a separate question, nearly half of all Americans who ended up saying that they don't want Biden to run in 2024 said his age is a major reason, with another 21% saying that it was a minor reason. So that age definitely stands out there, Stephanie. And of course, as you also ended up mentioning, 41% of adults approve of President Biden's overall job rating, and you ended up having 54% disapproving. That's down from back in January when President Biden's approval rating was at 45%.
Yeah, those are dark numbers for them. Mark, former President Trump is facing charges in New York over an alleged hush money scheme involving Stormy Daniels. Has that affected his support among voters at all?
Yeah, actually, the support among Republicans and Republican primary voters is even stronger, Stephanie. Our poll finds that 68% of Republicans say that they believe they should stand behind Donald Trump amid the investigations, amid his recent arrest, because he's being unfairly targeted and they must support him. That's compared to 26% who ended up saying, you know what, Republicans might need someone else who won't be distracted in a general election against President Biden.
We have running against Trump potentially a few Republican candidates who have thrown their hat in the ring. How's that field shaping up at this point?
Yeah, we had our first trial heat of the very, very early 2024 Republican presidential race, and it shows the former president Donald Trump at 46% among Republican primary voters. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who, remember, has not officially announced a presidential bid, although we're all expecting him to do so, comes in second at 31%, and no one else gets more than 6%. And again, Stephanie, it's still very, very early, but when you look at Donald Trump's 46% in that trial heat, along with that other number where I said that so many Republican primary voters are standing behind him, given those investigations, and he is at this juncture the early front runner on the Republican race.
All right, Mark, thank you so much. That new NBC News poll was front and center on Meet the Press this week, with New Hampshire's Republican Governor Chris Sununu stopping by to share his thoughts on the state of the Republican Party heading into the 2024 election cycle. Here's moderator Chuck Todd.
Well, hello there, Stephanie. This week on Meet the Press, Republican Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire joined me to discuss the 2024 Republican primary after our brand new NBC News poll revealed that Donald Trump was the clear frontrunner for the GOP nomination. Here's what the governor had to say about the current state of the 2024 race.
I still don't think he's necessarily going to be the nominee. Look, I think your poll is spot on in all these areas, by the way. I think that's actually a great poll, and I hope folks listen to it. I'll say this. Republicans are rallying. They're supporting former President Trump over these indictments, right? And there's a lot of support there. Now, does it actually translate into a vote? We will see. I mean, most folks don't decide who they're voting for until about 3 weeks before the election. So there's a lot of politics to play out. There's not even a single debate has been had. Other candidates are going to get in the race. So I just think it's so far away. And at the end of the day, we want a winner, right? Republicans want someone who can win in November of 24. Donald Trump is a loser. He has not just lost once. He lost us in our House seats in 2018. He lost everything in 20. We should have 54 U.S. senators right now. We don't because of his message. So Donald Trump is positioning himself to be a four-time loser in 2024. We need candidates that can win.
Isn't the problem, though, that a majority of Republicans don't believe what you just said, that he lost in 2020? Because the loser message should work unless you don't believe he lost.
Well, it's not just 2020, right? We got crushed in 2022. We should have 54 U.S. Senate seats. We don't, because he is part of that message. We lost in 2018. So it's not just about whether he won or lost in 20, which he did, of course. So I understand folks are supporting him. They think that a lot of this stuff with the DA is political, which I believe it is, too, by the way. It's creating a lot of sympathy. He's playing the victim card, right? Believe it or not, former President Trump is now playing the victim card, and he's making some headway with it. But at the end of the day, it has to turn into votes.
You can see my full interview and a lot more at meetthepress.com, including more on our poll. You can also get more Meet the Press here on NBC News Now every single weekday at 4 p.m.
Chuck, thanks so much. After months of warnings, Bed Bath & Beyond, which also owns Bye Bye Baby, filed for bankruptcy yesterday. For decades, it was the store with just about everything for your home or your kid's college dorm. But very soon, those stores will likely all be closing. Brett Rose is president and CEO of United National Consumer Suppliers, a wholesale distributor who works with several major companies, including Bed Bath & Beyond. Good morning, Brett. Thanks for joining me. This wasn't really a shock announcement. Bed Bath & Beyond has been warning for months that they were in trouble. So help us understand how the company got here and what Chapter 11 allows them to do.
Sure. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me back. It certainly was no surprise to see that article yesterday. When you have a company as big as Bed Bath & Beyond, who sort of failed to change with the times. The ball really started in motion pre-COVID. Then, the retail landscape as we know it changed going in and out of the pandemic. And what happened with Bed Bath is really they started to face more intense competition as consumers were forced to shop strictly online. And they were slow to the game. You have a company that started in the 70s, went public in the 90s, really about the same time Amazon launched. They should have been positioned really key to be a leader when online sales started to take off. And they really dropped the ball there. So Chapter 11 is going to allow them to figure out a way to save their 14,000 employees and the stores they're keeping open. But unfortunately, I think this is just a step. And, I think you've got Chapter 7 or others right behind it.
Did the pandemic kind of put the last nail in the coffin?
Yeah, I should probably say I was always been a huge Bed Bath & Beyond consumer. I was the guy who loved the coupons like everybody else. And I think the pandemic did just that because people, one of Bed Bath's original competitive edge was you walked in there, you walked the stores, the way it was sort of modeled, you had the envelope, the coupon in hands. The pandemic stripped that. So what happened was their only sort of kitschy experiential edge when they came back was the coupons. But at that point, consumers were online. Their stores at this point had been poorly managed, poorly displayed. They were certainly a victim of the inventory crises that were going on. And when you're looking at, $5 billion in debt and $4 billion in assets, somehow you've got to fill that delta. And they unfortunately did not, which is a shame because I think they could have had they done some different management decisions.
We know that Bye Bye Baby, a discount beauty, health, and cosmetics retailer, Harmon, are also owned by Bed Bath & Beyond. Those stores are closing as well. So what do consumers need to know? Is everyone just going to be going back to Amazon?
I think they're already at Amazon. I do think, especially whether this goes from Chapter 11 to 7, we will see a rebirth of Bye Bye Baby and Harmon. Bed Bath had a division called CTS, which was Christmas tree shops, which was originally sort of a Northeast Massachusetts chain that started to expand down the East Coast. They sold that off a few years ago. Regardless of what happens, whether Bed Bath emerges stronger, which, I sort of hope they do, of course, I do think you will see Bye Bye Baby because there's a lot of cash for that, a lot of cachet behind that brand. And Harmon, to some degree, sold off. So I think consumers, there's no shortage in baby goods, and there's certainly no shortage of home goods. I think where a Bed Bath & Beyond could have positioned themselves differently and still may if they force themselves into the off-price retailer. They had one step in traditional retail and one step in off-price. They're not quite a home goods. They're not quite a department store. They need to decide who they want to be when they grow up.
Just quickly, do you believe, yes or no, that there is a place for brick and mortar stores in our economy?
100%. I think brick and mortar is alive and well. It just needs to be done right.
All right, Brett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A chilly start to the week for many of us. Let's get a It's your morning news now weather. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is tracking the cold front and joins us now. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Stephanie. So good to see you. And it is chilly. You need the jackets for so many of us. About 59 million of us are waking up to freeze alerts and walking out the door to freeze alerts this morning. It's all due to a big area of high pressure kind of anchored over the plains. It's going to stay in place over the next several days. It's funneling down that cold Canadian air, even down to portions of the southern plains are well below normal for this time of year. So daytime highs anywhere from 10 to 25 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. And we're going to feel it as we head out today into tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we'll start to moderate a bit. But take a look at some of these temperatures. This morning earlier, we woke up to temperatures below freezing in many spots. We're not going to rebound very far in some spots. Minneapolis, just 50 today. That's 12 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. Dallas, 66. Memphis, 66. Washington, D.C., 8 degrees below average for this time of year. Tomorrow, another cold one. Chicago, 50 degrees. In the 40s in Denver, 62. Kansas City, Buffalo, 50 degrees. That's 10 degrees below normal. So we're going to break a few records as well. That's the first big weather story. The second big weather story is a frontal boundary that's kind of draped over Florida. It's going to bring showers and storms throughout the day, especially this afternoon into the evening hours. Some of these storms could be on the strong side. So we're going to look out for winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Could see some hail, an inch or larger, and also a brief tornado is possible. That's another story we're going to watch as we go throughout the afternoon to evening hours. And we could see quite a bit of rain, too. Florida has received a lot of rain in the past few weeks. We're going to add on to that locally 3 to 6 inches, especially where you see the darker colors, the oranges, the reds, yellows. That's where we're seeing the heaviest rain or expecting the heaviest rain. For the rest of the country, we're looking at wet weather in the Pacific Northwest. Once again, we're looking at higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain. Plenty of sunshine in the southwest. In the middle of the country, we're looking at the chance for rain developing over the southern plains. That's going to start tonight, and then we're going to see the Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to see some flooding conditions possible throughout the next days there. Below average temperatures continuing today, tomorrow, Wednesday. And then when you look at the Great Lakes, we're looking at some blue there. That's indicating the chance for some snow showers mixing in. Really dreary throughout northern parts of New England as well. Wednesday, this is what we're going to watch. Severe storms in the southern plains. Could see some really gusty storms, some tornadoes as well. That's one story. This rain's going to extend into portions of the southeast, the Gulf Coast, and we could see some heavy rain there as well. Friday, we're going to build the heat in the west. That's going to be a big difference. Then as we go across the country, we're going to start to moderate those temperatures. Sunny and mild in the southern plains. Lots of rain throughout the northern plains to the upper Midwest. Also looking at the northeast into portions of the southeast. More rain there as well. Stephanie?
All right, Michelle, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.